We all know this feeling. You're trying to learn a new skill, plan a vacation, learn a language, explore a topic, and suddenly you have 20 tabs open, a dozen videos saved to watch later, and a handful of articles you swear you're going to get back to eventually. All this information ends up in a digital junk drawer, and the thought of having to organize it all into folders and notes is so overwhelming, we just don't. But what if the organizing part of all this was automatic? I had a huge aha moment when I started using an AI tool called Recall.AI. I realized it wasn't just saving my links, it was reading everything I gave it and auto-categorizing it for me. It was building this amazing connected web of interests, and I didn't have to create a single folder. It completely removed the most tedious part of learning online. Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Eric Nelson, and I do reviews about AI and technology, photography, videography, and teaching people how to use these tools that would be helpful in your everyday life. Today we're going to take a dive into Recall.AI and see what it's used for, what problems it can solve, how you might be able to use it, and whether this is right for you. So the first thing we're going to do is to jump into learning about how do we use this. There's 3 ways that we can interact with Recall.AI. Now the first way is obviously via their web app. And so we're going to jump into that and take a look at that really quick. Here we have the main page in the Recall's website. And the first thing that we see on here is some of the content that I've already clipped here. And this just gives an overview of the things that we have in our Recall dashboard. Now we're going to get into how to use this and all the different features that are on the website, but I just want to kind of show visually what the web app looks like. The second way that we can interact with Recall.AI is via the browser extension. And I feel like the company's actually pushing people to use the extension the most. So if we look over here and say that back in MacRumors, one of my favorite sites, and we're on a page here that talks about 26 hidden iOS tricks. We're just studying about some of the new things that came out in iOS 26. This is installed the same way in the Chrome Web Store. And if we click on it, we can see immediately that it comes up with initially a concise summary of the article. It's automatically done that to begin with, because it knows we're probably going to come and ask for just a small summary of the article and what it talks about. So by default, it's already done that. Now there's just a couple things that I want to point out here initially about this extension interface that is worth noting. The first one here, you can see that we default to the notebook view. And the notebook view is where we can start to enter in notes and interact with the chat feature, and it will add those chat interactions to our notebook. Really quickly, I'm going to switch over to the reader view. The reader view is just another view of the article with all of the other noise stripped away. The other tab up here is called connections. We're going to get more into what these are, and it just gives you an insight into the connections that Recall.AI created on its own. So back to the notebook view, we can see that we have a concise summary. We can see that it's annotated those quite nicely. And here I can expand and collapse this particular part of the notebook. Also on the ellipses, I can regenerate it, copy, or delete it. But we can also come in here and start taking our own notes. iOS 26 is good for blah, blah, blah. This is sort of like Notion, where we can come in and start to add our own notes, but we can intermix our notes with the chat interactions. Down here, you can see it's given us another prompt of detailed summary. So maybe we want to say, okay, the concise summary was okay, but not enough information. Let's click on detailed summary, and it's going to go and interact with the chat and give us the more detailed summary than what we were given in the concise. Okay, great. So it's generated that already. It gives us some bulleted points here about what this article is about, and it's even categorized a lot of those things, which is nice. Now at the bottom here, we have a few icons where we can add to notebook, copy the text, regenerate it. We can also give a thumbs up or thumbs down. This helps us train the model to say whether it was a good or not response. I want to note that just because we generated the detailed summary doesn't mean it's added to our notebook. We have to come down here and click on this icon saying add to notebook, or it won't be there. So we'll click on that, then we'll collapse this again. And if we collapse our concise summary, here you can see we have our detailed summary now added. Again, note here that our notes that we added are still in here, and we can continue to intersperse our notes and the interactions with the chat. We have down at the bottom here, chat with source content. So we can say, give me the most salient points from this article in bullet format with a short description. And that will go and it will tell me what it thinks is are the most important things to note from this article. And it's already come and said, okay, background sounds, icon tinting, reduced sounds, blah, blah, blah. Great. Again, we have to go and add this to the notebook or we'll lose that. So we'll click add to notebook and we'll collapse this. And here we have our interactions. And I can just continue to go back and forth with the chat here, adding my own notes and the interactions with the chat to my notebook. Now, a couple of the things I want to point out up here in the extension window are we can hit open, and open will take us to this note in Recall.AI's website. So we click on that, and just like that, we are now in Recall's website. We will come back here and look at a couple other things. We have a link icon here, share card and copy link to clipboard. So if we want to send this to somebody else and say, check this out, we can click that and it will generate a link. And if we come here and just do Control V and hit enter, it takes us to this note, which we can send to ourselves or send that to somebody else if we want to share it. A couple other things at the top here, keep the extension locked in place when clicking away. If we click away, we see that that collapsed. So if we bring it back, we can say lock. And then when we click over here again, which I'm clicking, it stays where it is. We can expand it to make it a much larger window. We can collapse it back again. We can click the gear icon, and this just allows us to set up some very limited settings for Recall.AI's extension. And then obviously we can collapse up here with the X. Okay, so what's the second way that we can interact with content? Well, that would be directly on their website. We'll go ahead and copy the URL for this article, come back to the main web page, and over here in the upper right corner, we have add content. And this is where we would add content in multiple forms. And we can see we can do URLs, wikis, PDFs. We can import bookmarks or from Pocket, Markdown files, or we can do an empty note where we copy in our own text from some other source. And under URL, you can see it supports YouTube videos, Apple, Spotify podcasts, websites, articles, Vimeo videos, online PDFs, Google Docs, Google Slides, TikTok videos, a various amount of sources that we can put into Recall.AI and have it parse. I do love this, that they support a lot of different sources of content. So back to the article that I clipped, I can paste that in here. You can see that it's already summarized it. I can click on that, and just like that, it's brought it in. Okay, so we've been able to bring in content with the web extension. We've been able to import sources directly on the web app. The third one is they have in beta format mobile apps for Recall.AI. You can go and install these now. Over here, and I'm just emulating my phone on my Mac to make this easier, but this is actually running on my iPhone. We have the app, and you can see it looks pretty much exactly like the web app, very similarly organized, so it makes it simple to go between the different options. And on home, I've got all my cards here, and I can click into one, and we've got the same interface. We've got our reader interface here that gives us access to the article, the original article. We have the notebook with all the interactions that I've already given before, and we can expand and contract those. We can continue to add our own notes. You can see down here that it's got a lot of different ways to give rich text editing. Again, like a Notion where we just add our own notes in here and then intermix that with our chat interactions. We have our chat over here, and we can continue to interact with the chat and add that to our notebook. We have quizzes, which we will get to in a minute and see how those work, and our connections also, and this concept of a graph. And this is a little bit unique to Recall.AI, where they take your original content and create a graph of subtopics that you can go click into and maybe chase that down which might be useful if you're doing research. And again, just showing that this third method of interacting with our sources on our phones is basically the same as the extension and the web app. Okay, so now that we've seen how we get content into Recall.AI, the question is, what do we do with it? How do we interact with it? I'm gonna click into this first one here. And again, we have the same interface: reader, notebook, chat, quiz. We're gonna get into these. First of all, I wanna show up here at the top, we have this technology tag. I did not add this tag, and this is where Recall.AI is a little bit different, and where I was talking about earlier, where we have this auto-organization and auto-categorization. When you add content into Recall, it parses it and it intelligently decides what kind of tags it thinks it should apply to it. It usually does a pretty good job, but we can do a few things here where this plus sign allows us to add our own tags of, let's say, iOS. We can also delete the tag that it applied. We don't have to take that. And then over here, you can see we're building out this kind of graph of content based on these tags. This is how Recall is a little bit different from, say, Notebook LM, where you have to go create a notebook. It's specific to a topic. You add things to it. You want a new topic, then you go and create a new notebook and add things to it. That is a great way to organize, especially when you're doing research. The thing that Recall says is, hey, we'll go and we'll categorize this, and then the organization happens through these tagging systems, which we can go and add to as well. Okay, so we've already kind of taken a look at the notebook, how we do notes, and how we bring in these chats from the chat bot. Another feature that's really cool, and a lot of tools are adding now, so it's not unique to Recall, but I'm glad that they've added this, is we can start to go and create dynamic quizzes generated by AI to test our memories and help us retain the information that we're learning from this particular content. We can click right here on Generate AI Quiz, and it will go and take that content and then create a dynamic quiz based on it. And then you can see here that it's come back and given us a quiz of 26 questions. I can click this drop down and it tells us what the question is and then the answers. And we can go and we can modify these, where we can click this button up here to delete the question. Maybe we think the question's bad. We can delete some of the answers. If we want to modify that, we can add options. This obviously wouldn't be good if you're doing your own quiz, but if you're trying to generate this for, say, somebody else, maybe you're helping your kid with a topic in school that they're struggling with, you can have the AI generate the quiz, and you can come in here and modify it to your liking, and then you can give the quiz to them. You can also come up here and say create question, and you can add to that list of questions that it's already created. Well, let's come in here and say start quiz, and we'll see what it looks like when we actually want to take the quiz. And it has this really nice clean interface where it brings up the question and then the options, and you can select the answer, check the answer. I just happened to get it right, even though I just guessed on that, and continue. You also have up here in this upper right corner, this peek feature that takes you to the source of the content, lets you kind of research it again. It doesn't give you the answer to the question. It just lets you go and research again and come back to it and then select your answer. And then up here in the upper right corner, you'll see this X. If we want to get out of the quiz, we can click that and we're back. We can come back and it will save this quiz. So you can come back to it and run it again. You can generate the quiz again and just keep iterating on this until that knowledge sinks in. And finally, I want to look at the main interface outside of just the individual sources. As you're adding things and adding things and adding things over time, and you're building those connections and you're building those tag categorizations, you may want to start interacting across those different sources, not just in the individual one. So when we come to chat here on the left side, this is a global chat, not just a chat for the one source. Here we can start to interact with our knowledge base. You can click on this little @ sign here, and it will bring up lists of our sources that we brought in, as well as the tags that have been created. So you may say like, okay, now I want to come to my technology/AI tag here. And you select that, and you can see that right up here. It sets the context for my chat base. Now it won't go across everything. It will just go across all my sources that are tagged with technology/AI. What are the main tools in these articles and what are they used for? And so now I'm going to go search all these different sources that were tagged with technology/AI, and my searching, my chatting goes across all the sources that I have tagged in Recall.AI. And now you can see it's building a dynamic response to my question as it searched all the different sources that I have currently in my account. And then it came down here, and this is something that is great because I didn't ask it to do this. It created a summary table of those tools and the main use, the key features, ideal for, which is fantastic. I didn't even ask it to do that. And as before, I can come down here and I can copy this, I can regenerate it, and I can give a thumbs up or thumbs down to inform the LLM whether that was a good response or not. Okay, now we can come over here to the graph section. And the graph, this is a little, I won't say hokey, but I don't know that I find it terribly useful yet. It's interesting, but you can see it just split the whole graph out, and now I have to kind of zoom out. And it's just kind of moving these graphs over here individually. I kind of have to drill in a little bit, drill out, come down here. There's not a lot of organization to it, and I can't really move them closer. So I don't know. I guess my feedback to the Recall folks would be, this is maybe the beginning of something cool. I feel like there's not much to it yet, and I don't find myself coming here because it doesn't seem that useful to me. I'll go and interact with the graphs more in the source level because at least it's more specific to that source, but this global graph just feels a little hodgepodgey and not really that useful to me. If we come over here now to the review section, this gives some statistics on some of the quizzes that we've done in the past. You can see my progress. These are quizzes I've taken in the past, how well I've done. My progress is 50%. I can start a review here and it will go into, this quiz that I generated just a little bit earlier. So it's just some kind of insights. We can come up here to cards and questions, and it will show me the different quizzes that I've generated, the number of question counts. I can expand this down and see an overview of the questions that I have here. So just a high-level overview of the quizzes that I've taken and the questions that are associated with them. And again, if I come here to settings, this just has a few high-level settings that I can use for setting languages, fonts, emails, browser extensions. Not a ton to show here. Okay, so to recap, I want to kind of bring this all together because I've done a few videos on several different tools out there. There's a great number of tools coming out and already been out for a while. And the question is, well, how are they different? When would I use one of the other? At first, I was a little confused with what Recall.AI was and why it was different. And it started to become clear to me as I'm just out reading articles and I'm not researching any particular topic. I'm just reading news articles and I am looking at YouTube videos, nothing that is really correlated to one topic. A lot of times I'll start reading and I'll just forget and won't come back to it. So I can bring that into Recall, or I can have a YouTube video that I was going to set up for watching later. In fact, let's go look at that because I do this all the time where I'm looking through the main page of YouTube and I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. Save to watch later. And then I go back and I've got like 500 save to watch later videos. Not a great use of my time. I'm never going to go back and watch those. I'm now getting in the habit where I will come in here and I'll click on a video.
iOS 26 is here with a brand new.
And let's just say that instead of just clicking save to watch later, I'm going to come in here and we're going to click on the Recall extension. It automatically parsed this and gave me a summary of the video. I don't have to spend any time here. I can just come up here in the upper corner here and say save. Now this is in my Recall account and we just come right back here really quick and go to home. There it is. And we can see that it's already assigned a tag to it. So my point is that instead of just going and clicking watch later in YouTube, I can just really quickly save it into my Recall notebook and then come back later. Recall will have automatically assigned some tags and started categorizing my content. The point being, Recall is an organizer of content. your web articles, your YouTube videos, your wiki articles. You just start putting stuff into it and it will auto-categorize those with your tags, and you can go and refine those tags later. And then you can go look at the summaries and start interacting with it later. To me, this is sort of a more intuitive way to do something as opposed to something like Pocket, which is great. It was a way to go and just store articles for looking at later, but I would rarely go back and read them. This allows me to auto-organize and just come back and get the concise summary of it without having to read it. I can read it if I want, but I can just look at the summary. So again, I see Recall.AI as just this kind of organization of all the content that I really struggle staying on top of and ever coming back to. So that's really the gist of it. I just wanted to kind of show the three main interfaces for interacting with Recall, which is, again, their web app, the extension, and the mobile app. I still think the most useful way of interacting with this tool is in the extension. It allows you to stay in context on the page that you're in. And then the usefulness of the mobile app is that while you're on the go and you want to come back to it, or you're sitting waiting for your oil to get changed, you can bring that up and start to look through some of your summaries of your now auto-categorized content. I would love to hear some comments from any of you that are using this tool, who have been using it for a while. If I've missed anything or any valid things to point out, please come to the comments and teach us. I want to hear from you as well. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. I really appreciate it. If you found this content useful in any way, I would just ask that you consider subscribing. Just click on that notification. It really helps a small channel like mine. Again, I appreciate your support, and I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you.